Hey guys, in this video we are going to learn the single most important thing in factoring. We're going to learn really what factoring is at its fundamental core. And the cool thing for you guys is it's actually something pretty similar. Factoring is all about equivalence. That's it. You already know what equals is. You have some idea of equality. We've worked with equivalence in school. That's what factoring is. It's equivalence. So, what does equals mean? It means that no matter what two things look like, they are exactly the same. Now, most of the time, if I say to you, 7 equals 7, you say, okay, cool, yeah, 7 equals 7. I got you, right? That makes sense. 7 is a thing. We have an idea of what it is. You can think about in your head 7 apples. You can see 7 apples. You could see 7 trees, or 7 water bottles, or 7 whatever. And you can say to yourself, okay, well, if I had 7 water bottles in my left hand and 7 water bottles in my right hand, then no, those would be equivalent. And we have this idea. What we did then in math, so this is obviously math did not always exist. At some point somebody had to say, hey, maybe we should come up with some symbols. Maybe we should come up with the number 7 to represent these couple of things that we have in a pile over here. And so all of these things were invented at some point in time, and the equal sign, or the idea of equivalence, was created to show that things that look different are actually the same. So, even though two things look different, they're the same. If I said, I have an X in my left hand and a 7 in my right hand, you wouldn't know anything about those two things, right? They look different. Maybe they're not the same, we don't know. They definitely look different. I don't think that they're the same. So I'm not immediately going to say, yeah, okay, X probably equals 7. But if I tell you X equals 7, now you know that those two things are exactly identical. There's nothing different about them. Anywhere where you see a 7, you could use an X instead. Anywhere where you see an X, you could use a 7 instead. And that's the whole idea of substitution, right? So now we get into all of these other areas of math that are really fundamentally based on the topic of equivalence. Now, factoring is also one of those areas that's highly based in equivalence. The point of factoring, right, here we go, is to make something equal but different looking. Okay, the point of factoring, and obviously the reverse of factoring, is distribution. And we go back and forth. So we have this thing over here, and we say A times B plus C, A times the quantity B plus C. And we distribute, we have our rainbows, A times B, A times C, and we get AB plus AC. That's what we call distribution. But we can go in the reverse order as well. We can say, okay, well, if I have AB plus AC and I tell you to factor that, you would give me A times the quantity B plus C in parentheses. But what does that mean? What does that mean, right? And we forget what it means because so often you're asked, just factor this and then you give an answer, or distribute this and then you give an answer. And you don't ever see this equation right here, this equation that's so fundamental down here at the bottom. A times the quantity B plus C is exactly the same as, it is 100% equal to A times B plus A times C. That's the whole point of factoring. That's the whole thing. The point of factoring is to make something that's equal, exactly equal, perfectly equivalent, but it looks different. And why do we do that? Well, a lot of times you want to maybe plug in for one thing or plug in for a different thing, and so it's a little bit easier. Maybe you could simplify B plus C pretty easily, but you can't simplify AB plus AC as easily. There's all sorts of things, right? And so we're just trying to navigate some different areas of math paths, if you will. So we do it for a variety of reasons, but factoring at its core is just making something that's equal, but it looks a bit different. So, factor means, anytime somebody tells you to factor, they give you this command, factor means make something that is equal, but it looks different. That's what it means. Distribute also means make something that is equal, but it looks different. You're just going in a different direction. They're the same exact thing. In this worksheet, we're going to practice this skill a bunch. We're going to look at those equivalence statements, right? So we're going to make equations, and we're going to have the distributed form on the one side and the factored form on the other side. That's going to be, that's what we're going to do. So, let's get started.